weren't my fault, weren't my doing. I was not responsible for. And I'm finally at almost 43 years old, finally getting those things off my chest, off my shoulders, and not living under that weight anymore. Who I need to be, coming from the heart, coming from the heart. Welcome back to MOMnation from the Heart. And now a word from our sponsor. Hey y'all, Katie here, founder of MOMnation and owner and operator of Team EvoAZ at eXp Realty, your go-to gal for anything real estate in the state of Arizona. I am the sponsor of today's show. I will link my page and information in the show notes so you can quickly and easily get in touch with me should you need anything real estate, any advice, or maybe you're looking to get into the business. I sure hope you enjoy today's show. Thanks for listening. Hey, MOMnation, we are back with another amazing episode of From the Heart, where we share inspirational stories, useful information, and we discuss a variety of women-related topics. I'm Katie, the founder of MOMnation, and I would like to extend a super warm welcome to the beautiful co-host, Sherry, our co-founder. Hey, Cher.
Hey, how are you?
Doing awesome. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm recovering from Vegas. So
that's
true. Why my voice sounds like this.
So you were there for work, though. You weren't like, just partying it up.
Right. Work and fun.
Hey, we got to have a little bit of fun sometime as moms. Like, it's okay. We're allowed to do that, right?
Exactly. I think it was the first time that I haven't had kids in like my whole life.
It feels like that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, welcome back. And I'd also like to take a moment to introduce our random mom, shall we say? We've got a random mom on today, and we are keeping her identity private. And it's because she is going to go into some detail about a relationship that she has that I think she wishes was probably better, but we'll learn all about that. And it's really, it's with her mom. So I think a lot of us as moms of daughters, or, with our moms ourselves, have experienced along the way, maybe we're experiencing it now, just sort of a strained relationship with mothers, between mothers and daughters. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Sherry and I have lots of experience with this ourselves. So it's actually going to be, as this story unfolds, I'm sure it's going to be a great episode for us all. So without further ado, Rando Mom, welcome.
Hi, thanks you guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to dive into this. And, the more that we talk about, the more we can help our audience. And that's really what is important to us, is like, hey, these are things that are happening. We don't need to sweep it under the rug anymore, because, I think we're all of that somewhat same generation where we just swept everything under the rug. No, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me. I'm just moving on, kind of thing. But Sherry and I are stopping the rug sweep, because other people need to feel like, hey, there's others that are out there that are experiencing the same thing. Let's share information. Let's build each other up and support each other. And then, just experience greater relationships, greater lives, more in depth, within those relationships. So I'll stop talking and I'll let you talk. Talk to us a little bit about your story.
So, as a response to one of your guys' posts about, hey, we're looking for content for our podcast and, just our mom audience in general. And it was right around the holidays, or it might have even been just after the holidays. And it really hit me around that time because, the holidays are stressful as it is. We've got big families, lots of in-laws. My parents are have been divorced for a long time, and they're in different states. And so we usually kind of like swap holidays. We'll visit one, or they'll visit here, or like one will come for Thanksgiving and one will come for Christmas, type of thing. And I kept seeing all of these posts online about, like these moms like our age hanging out with their moms. And, oh, I love my mom. She's my best friend. And they're doing all this fun stuff, and they're hanging out with their kids, and everything is perfect. I mean, we all know nothing is as perfect as it is on Instagram, but I don't know, it just kind of hit me. And I thought, I know I'm not the only one with a strained mother-daughter relationship. And I think that's pretty much how I describe it, because I love my mom. I mean, that's why I'm kind of presenting myself in this anonymous, witness protection format, because I mean, she doesn't really go online that much. She's not on social media, but if for some reason somebody saw me or heard me or saw my name or something and they shot it over to her, I just wouldn't want to hurt her feelings like that, And I don't know. I love my mom, but yes, we have a strained mother-daughter relationship. So, and I know I'm not the only one.
Not at all. And so you kind of feel like, let's just jump into that a little bit, because I'm kind of dealing with a similar situation too. You feel like you might say something about what has happened that may hurt her feelings, or how would you, coming to light with your story and sort of sharing the story, do that? Just trying to understand that.
Well, there's so much history. We'd have to be on here for like 3 hours before you could even, dip your toe in any of it. But like I said, my parents separated when I was, 13. And, my mom remarried right away. And my dad was heartbroken. And it wasn't until, you don't put these pieces together when you're a kid, especially when you're in junior high and high school, because you're busy with your own life. You're just like, okay, whatever, mom and dad have been fighting. And I was not surprised. Nobody was surprised, And so in our family growing up, it was me. And I have an older brother who was 2 years older than me, and my mom and my dad. And all of our extended family lived in towns that were, we visited family all the time and stuff like that. And, it wasn't until much later, after I had my own kids, that I started piecing things together. I would hear comments from my aunts and cousins on my dad's side, and they would make little remarks about my mom, and it would just kind of go over my head. Like I just didn't absorb any of it. And, I just pieced together later that she had been having an affair with, the man who became my stepdad. And then much, much later, like within the past, I would say a couple of years, then you start, like just all these little pieces of the puzzle start falling together, and I don't have any proof. I never saw anything. I was pretty oblivious to most things when I was a kid. But supposedly she was having several affairs, like she had more than one affair with more than one person.
Gotcha.
And, those are her choices. When I was a kid, my dad, was not the most fun person to be around. He had his faults, but I do know that he was head over heels in love with my mom. He was a very faithful person. He was just kind of rough around the edges,
Mm-hmm.
So, and for whatever it's worth, this was in the 70s, most of it, 70s, early 80s. When women got married in the 60s, it was, either you go to college and you become a professional of some sort, usually a secretary, a nurse, or a teacher, right? Unless you, go into higher education and get your master's or doctorate or something like that. But usually it was one of those three choices, right? And my mom was going to school to become a teacher. And she always described it to me as she ended up getting her MRS degree. That's what they called it. So you either went to school and got a career and an education, or you got married. And that's just kind of how it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't doubt that she loved my dad, at the beginning and stuff like that, but she was young. And there's, and then find out very recently that she went through some other very difficult things at that time, before she met my dad. That was, more pieces of the puzzle that fell into place,
Mm-hmm.
And then so after and jump in and interrupt me anytime, you guys, because I know this isn't a singular story. I know a lot of us in our generation, we're kids of divorce,
Yep, I was.
Yeah. How old were you when your parents got divorced?
I was 2.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And think about that dynamic. Just growing up at that time, I was born in the late 70s also. And so at that time, that was, I was young then, but I feel like that was not common. A lot of my friends, their parents were still married, whether they should have been or not. They were. Both of their parents were married. And so being a child, and I was an only child, so I didn't have any siblings, being a child going through just that part, never mind all of the other junk that I went through and was exposed to, but just that part was really difficult to navigate as a young lady, very young lady, not understanding. Because, you think about your kid brain. You don't have the experiences. You don't understand how the world works, how people work. You're not in control of yourself. Somebody else or many others are in control of you. It's a very, very scary, very confusing time for me. And I had extremely young parents. They were teenagers. So that also played a factor in that as well. But it's definitely, I'm not saying that it's any easier for kids these days, but it's definitely a bit more common than it was when I went through it.
Yeah, and I think the system nowadays is more used to dealing with families that just have a different structure. It's kind of like, okay, well, you see your dad these weeks, you see your mom these weeks. Okay, we'll send the homework home with, for both parents or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, back then it was a little bit more like, not taboo, but I think back then when people got divorced, it was looked upon kind of like as a failure.
Yeah.
And then they had to deal with the fact that everybody sort of saw them as having this quote unquote failed marriage, and then judging all the things that go into all that.
Yeah. And then be a kid of that.
Right.
Okay. I have no control whatsoever of what's going on. And now, whether I'm being judged or not, I feel like I am.
Right.
And so I'm walking through this life with a kid's brain, not having all this experience that, my parents even had or others. And I'm sorting through all of this. It was quite the time. I've now, with the help of therapy and with, digging into my childhood, basically, I've now finally realized a lot of things that I've carried with myself for so long weren't my fault, weren't my doing. I was not responsible for. And I'm finally at almost 43 years old, finally getting those things off my chest, off my shoulders, and not living under that weight anymore.
Yeah. And it's a lot to carry around.
It absolutely is. So when did you, so take me back to, I'm 13, parents split. How was the relationship then? Would you say that it just you kind of grew apart, or was there never a bond established to begin with?
No, here's the weird thing is when I was a kid, my mom and I were really close all through high school, because I ended up, my parents, even though they got divorced, and they were very good about not using my brother and I against the other. They were very good about not manipulating us and,
You're lucky.
Tell your dad, blah, 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 that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
They were very good about, they let us decide who we wanted to live with. Like I said, my brother was 2 years older than me. So I was probably in 7th grade and he would have been a freshman in high school. We lived in a very small town in the Midwest. And, I decided, I went and lived with, I stayed with my mom, and actually my brother did too. We both stayed with my mom. We ended up moving into, so this was the house that my stepdad owned, right? And on the main floor, which would be the first floor, there was a business. It was his, he was a photographer, and he had a studio there. So he would do like family pictures and weddings and senior pictures. He did all of the school pictures for our town, that kind of stuff. So the first floor of the house, and it was this old Victorian house. That's where the studio and the business was. The second floor was where he lived. And then the third floor had been made a long time previously, had been made into a separate apartment that the owners would rent out. So conveniently, when my parents split up, we moved into that apartment. And I still had no idea that my mom and my stepdad were a thing. It was just like this, oh, there's a space available for us to move into. My mom at that time was actually working for him. I don't know. I'm like such an idiot, like to not even put these pieces together.
But you had your kid brain.
Yeah.
So you were thinking about kid things.
Yeah. Okay. Here's my thing, right? Because when my parents and I moved to that town, we lived way out in the country. My bus ride to school was 45 minutes, right? All my friends lived in town. So when my parents split up and we ended up moving into this apartment in my stepdad's house, I was like, awesome. I get to see my friends every day. I can walk home from school instead of taking the bus, and I can watch MTV because they had cable. It was like, you just don't even, I just kind of rolled with the punches. I didn't really think about things. I got along with both of my parents. I saw my dad whenever I wanted to see him. And I mean, not really much changed for me right away, at least at the beginning. Right. Mm-hmm. And then, small towns, people talk, people take sides. My mom and my stepdad realized they weren't very welcome here or there, whatever. Everybody, it's like, what church do you go to? So now we couldn't go to the church anymore, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So we ended up moving to a larger, further away town, and I had to leave my friends and my school, and I was a cheerleader and all that stuff. So we moved to this other town. My brother at this point was still living with us, and I was in high school at this time, and the school that we ended up, going to in that town was very rough school, very rough. Mm. And it was 3 or 4 times the population of the school that we attended in my hometown. My brother went there, I think, one day. And then he said, I'm going to move back and go live with dad and go back. Wow. Yeah. And so that's what happened. My brother ended up going back. And my brother and my dad did not have the best relationship. So that was a big thing for him to say, I'm going to go back and live with dad. Mm-hmm. But I stayed and I went to the school. I learned a lot, but we were only there for 1 semester, and then we moved down here to Arizona. Mm-hmm. And then my brother still stayed, and my dad and my brother still stayed in the small town where I grew up. So I forget what point I was getting to, but
no, you're okay. So you're here with mom now. So you're here in Arizona with mom. When did you start to feel the relationship change? Personally, for me, like I don't know that there was ever not a bond. Like I had a bond with my caregivers, we'll call them. I had a bond, but as I came into adulthood is where I felt things start to change a little bit.
Yep.
And my parents are both of that generation, and maybe you can relate with this because it sounds like we're about the same age. My parents are of that generation where your parents are God. They can do nothing wrong. You do what they say, no matter how the hell old you are. And that just isn't my speed. And I I spent a lot of time I'm an only child. I spent a lot of time alone. And we can get into my story another time, but I have always been kind of like an individual. And so as I started to have more control over myself and over my own life, I started making my own decisions and had my own thoughts and feelings. And I kind of feel like that's where things started to slide for me.
Yeah, I think I agree. It wasn't until after I got married. It wasn't even really until my second son was probably like toddler, kindergarten age that I started feeling this like tension, you know, and we would have family get-togethers and things like that. And I just felt really uncomfortable. And I just would be relieved when it was over, like either when I would come home or they would go home, you know, that type of thing. And I mean, there's a lot of, you know, layers and layers and layers over the years of things that kind of sort of led to that. But I kind of felt like I couldn't just relax and be myself around my mom anymore. I kind of felt like she was, I don't know if judging me is the right word. And maybe it had to do with the fact that as she got older, she got more religious, and I completely abandoned, you know, the religion that I grew up with. So there's that sort of judgmentalism stuff of like the religious over the non-religious. And just decisions that we made, my husband and I made as a family, you know, to do A, B, or C or whatever. And the fact, I think that my husband and I had a really good relationship, and we still do. We're going to be married 30 years next month.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But she, you know, my stepdad, it was like kind of socially awkward. You know, we found out years later he had some mental issues and stuff like that. And it was always like she was trying to like force him on people in social situations. Like the person who's like, you're in a conversation with people and you're having this great conversation, and she's like, oh, well, he does, you know, and she'll like bring him over and like sort of like force him into the conversation, or force, you know, somehow redirect the conversation towards her and my stepdad and how wonderful everything was with them. And sort of like, okay, well, that's great, but nobody was talking about that. You know, it's kind of like it's kind of like she developed some kind of insecurity and had to overcompensate for it in whatever situation we were in. And it just kept getting worse and worse from there, you know, and it wasn't always 100% centered around him. She got very insecure and would like insert herself into the conversation. And, you know, the person who, whenever you're in any type of discussion, always brings it back to themselves. Yeah.
One upper.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Sherry, I don't mean to be ignoring you, so please jump in.
No, you're fine.
She will. She'll pop in when she has something or a question. And, you know, like I said, she understands all of this because we've both been dealing with this for quite some time. I do understand that. And I feel like the word that you were searching for when you were saying, you know, she's maybe more judgmental of me, or I feel like she's more judgmental. I feel like the word is kind of is more like critical. And that's what I deal with, is like just constant critique of everything. Is there a booger in my nose? I'm so sorry. Like, I have a nose, I'm human, boogers come out of it. Like, you know what I mean? My breath stinks, so I need a mint. Thanks for letting me know. Like, I'm 40 something years old. I can do it, you know?
Or does she bring up stuff that you did when you were a teenager and still gives you shit about it and like a guilt trip? Oh my God.
1000%. And you know, and a lot of and what I have trouble with is the stuff that gets brought up from when I was a child with a child brain.
Right.
And I'm getting critiqued about it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I turn around and say, well, how about how I was raised? Oh, well, I was a teenager. I didn't know better. I did the best I could. Well, I fucking did the best I could. Like, I was a child. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Pardon my French, but that pisses me off.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I mean, this is extremely recent, like this past holiday season, just visiting with her. And I was like physically and emotionally drained. I cannot, like I said, I love my mom, but she doesn't make me feel good.
Same.
And I know that's not her job to make me feel good, but it's also not her job to make me feel bad. You know, and I think she feels like I owe her something, like I owe her some kind of huge apology for whatever the fuck I did when I was a teenager. And we all did stuff when we were teenagers. But I'm sorry, I'm not the one who split up our family. You know, like I'm not the one who made all these decisions. I was, you know, like the decisions that we made as children were results of the decisions that our parents made.
Correct.
And I'm not like blaming anybody. I mean, when you look at it from an adult perspective and you look back on things, you're like, yeah, I get that she wasn't in love with my dad. I get that she wasn't happy, but it's not my fault that, you know, I was a teenager.
You're a child.
Right. You know?
Do you, random mom?
Yeah.
Do you think that her now criticisms towards you are just more of an inner reflection where she's remembering back to who she was and how she handled things and, you know, taking that out on you kind of, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And I think there's a lot I probably should be going to therapy for this, honestly, because there's a lot that happened to her when she was a teenager that I didn't know about until recently. And then, like you said, the criticisms that she's, you know, throwing on me are basically, she could be talking to her former self.
Yeah.
Right. Here's my thing with that though. Okay. As Katie mentioned, her and I both have, you know, estranged or strained relationships. I haven't spoken to my mom in 7 years, no contact.
Oh, wow.
So mine's a little bit different, or maybe extreme is the better word. But my thought process on that as an adult now, it took me a long time to finally cut out a toxic relationship because I think our society makes it to where it's always the kid's fault. Like, why don't you talk to your parents? Why don't you do this? And I hate that, because if an adult parent has no more ties to their child, we should be asking, well, what did you do? I think, because at the end of the day, therapy is really important. And what you had mentioned, you know, maybe you found out things had happened to your mom. That's fine. Things had happened to us too. But our generation, why are we the ones that are trying to break these generational curses? Why are we the ones that are trying to unpack all of this trauma and deal with it so that our kids aren't going through the same thing? But then what, we can't look at our parents like they're adults too. They need to deal with their stuff. And that's fine. You went through something, but it doesn't make it okay for you to treat your children poorly and for you to have a bad relationship with them. It just doesn't.
100%. Like, why are we shouldering their mental health?
Yeah. It's not okay.
Yeah, I agree.
You know?
I agree.
My kid doesn't shoulder mine. I can tell you that. It's never going to happen. And, you know, therapy is very, very helpful. If you decide that you want to go that route, it's very, very helpful. And the biggest thing that it helped me with is that what I keep repeating, I was a child. Mm-hmm. These were people who were supposed to guide and teach me. They didn't. And then they expected me to act like an adult would, that had been guided and taught. okay, you know?
Yeah.
And so decisions that I have made when I was younger, in my early 20s and in my teens, yeah, they may not have been the best decisions, but I know myself, I was working with what I had. And the older that I got and the more that I learned and the more that I dove into myself and cared about myself enough to do that, because I wanted to unpack it, because I didn't want to start unpacking it when I had my kid. I knew that. I was an older mom and I planned all that. I was like, okay, to get rid of this shit before, it becomes somebody else's problem.
Yeah, and that's really smart too, Katie, because you do have a lot clearer vision in hindsight. And the fact that you waited a little bit before you had your son will give you even that much more ability to see those things more clearly, And I kind of wish that I had some of this insight when my kids were little. I mean, I don't think I screwed them up too bad, but no, they're I wonder if both of you, if your moms, because this is something that I'm wondering, because this recent visit that I had with her, I gave her so many openings. I would sort of like steer the direction, like I would make sure we had time to ourselves, just the two of us, to where she wouldn't feel like, she had to perform in front of other people or be a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
I made sure we had plenty of time to just, spend and chit chat, and I would sort of like put these little breadcrumbs out, and she just completely went another direction. It's almost like she has like shut this down for so long that she's either in complete denial that any of this stuff ever happened, or she's afraid of facing it because of whatever that, she's afraid to admit that she made these decisions, or afraid to I don't know. I really don't know. I think she is more comfortable just completely, like you said, sweeping it under the rug.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I ended up like accidentally getting up super early this morning for a completely different reason. And while I was working, I thought, well, I needed to have something on in the background. So I put on Netflix and I started watching the new Tyler Henry show. I don't know if you guys watch him at all. He's the Hollywood Medium.
Oh, no.
Oh my God. So he's got a new show on Netflix where instead of like Hollywood type people, he just meets with regular people. And he ends up reconnecting with somebody from his past. And right before because I had to turn off the show for this other meeting I was having. And while I was listening to in the background to, and I was busy and everything like that. And I was like, holy shit, are you kidding me? The mom of the passed away mom of this woman that he was reading, her message was something along the lines of, I wasn't able to in life face the things and talk about and apologize for the things that I needed to talk to you about. So I'm acknowledging it now. And this woman who was, I know, I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. And this woman who was having the reading done just like broke down, and she's like, oh my God, like that's basically what she was waiting to hear. And I thought, I think I needed to hear that, because I think that's where my mom is. Mm-hmm. I think that it's just too painful for her to even acknowledge or talk about. And it's more comfortable for her to just talk about surface things, who's doing what, and these people are doing this, and gossiping about this person, and how's everybody doing, and just like happy la 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 on the surface. Like, I'm not going to dig deep into that garden because I'm afraid of all the roots I will find. Mm-hmm. And I don't, there's reasons that I should press her for some of this information, but I'm also of the opinion in my life in general that if something is meant to be, it will unfold in its own time. And if you have to force something and you have to like pry and force and like strong arm a situation, it'll just make it even worse. So, yeah.
I totally agree. Do you feel like, I'll get into why I'm asking. Do you feel like she needs to come forward and apologize for things? Or are you more like, hey, whatever you did and the reasons you had for doing it is whatever. Let's just enjoy now. Let's be, sort of transparent with each other now. We're adults now. I'm not going to criticize you. You're not going to criticize me. If I'm having a bad day and I happen to seem grouchy, like, can we just understand that I'm a human and it has nothing to do with you, and you don't have to jump down this rabbit hole about all these things that I'm not communicating about? And that's the reason I'm grouchy. No, I just have a really busy life, and I'm a mom and I'm a business owner. And sometimes I'm grouchy, like I'm a human, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think at this point, I'm going to just leave the ball in her corner and let her decide. If there's something that she wants to tell me, that's up to her. It's not for me to force it out of her just because I know this information and she doesn't know that I know it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's her life and she owns that. It does and it doesn't have anything to do with me, but it's really not my decision.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that when I see her and we're just, having conversation and joking around, and she has to throw in 10 little snide comments about me and insults and backhanded compliments and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's like I just have to kind of let it go, I think, because it's really not worth it. It makes me upset. It makes me sad that we don't have a better relationship. It makes me sad that she feels like she has to take me down in order for her to feel better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also not my call to make. I just have to be able to protect myself and maybe make our visits shorter.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like we're fine on the phone. We're fine. Like she's good about emailing. I don't really talk to her on the phone that often. I talk to my dad probably at least once a week, my dad and my stepmom. I don't talk to my mom as often because I know that if I do call her or talk to her, it's going to be at least an hour or more. And I'm basically just nodding my head and saying, mm-hmm, while I'm going about my business, while she just like talks about completely irrelevant things. But she just needs to have somebody to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I mean, maybe just reevaluating, it comes to your piece, right? Like you have to reevaluate and figure out what is going to help you keep your peace, and setting certain boundaries, whether it's short visits or, hey, mom, we're going to do this visit, but these are my boundaries. I mean, that's not you digging into her stuff or forcing her to do anything. That's just saying, hey, this is my house and these are my rules and this is what I would appreciate from you while you're here.
yeah, I mean, you're completely right, but easier said than done, because then you get the whole guilt trip about like, oh, well, I'm not welcome, type of thing, that like she does that.
Yeah. But then that would be her decision thing,
Yeah. I mean, yes, you are 100% right.
No, I 100% believe or understand where you're coming from though. It is easier said than done.
Yeah.
Like I said, it took me almost 30 years of abuse. And then once it started, all of those things that happened to me as a child for years and years and years, once I started seeing them done to my children, that's when I was like, no, because I won't do that. So I get it. I would have taken all of the crap forever. But if you don't have that, if she's not doing that to your kids, I can, that's the only reason why I cut it off. So
actually, I think that was a turning point for me, is when I started seeing, not necessarily, it was a combination of her behavior and my stepdad's behavior towards one of my kids, not the other one, and I was like, okay, fuck it. It's not worth it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's when I just was like, okay, it just kind of kept it cordial.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. Just, surface, everything surface.
Mm-hmm. I deal a lot with that whole making things up thing. So like you had just said an example, if I were to create some boundaries, all of a sudden she's not welcome. Okay, well, that's not what I said, but I'm an adult that feels a certain way. And if we have clear communication, we can both get what we want. But I mean, it seems like you both sort of deal with that. Like there's this whole making up of things. Like for instance, if I'm grouchy because I have an extremely busy life and every once in a while humans get grouchy, it happens, like PMS, anyone, you know what I mean?
Right.
It's
not you being grouchy, it's directed specifically at her from her point of view. Right?
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's like, who died and made you the only person on the planet?
Right.
Because it actually has nothing to do with you. And if you stop for a moment and stop thinking about yourself and your own feelings, and you thought what I go through on a daily basis, how about how I grew up? Let's think about that. Then you might give a little bit of leniency and just be like, oh, this is a 42-year-old human person that is dealing with all of the pressures of adulting and parenting. And like, give me a break. I don't know.
And just everybody has shit that they deal with on a daily basis. Why is it all of a sudden about you, Mom?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like not you, but your mom.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah. And that's something that I really struggle with.
Do you think it's a narcissism thing? I wonder about that with I don't know.
It's anxiety.
I don't know. I think with my mom, it's might be she's definitely 100% a control freak for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's some narcissism in there. It's everything, like you said, it's about them.
Totally. I feel like in my experience, there's a high level of anxiety. There's a high level of, how do I look? How does everybody think I look? What did I just say something? What does everybody think about what I just said? Like, there's just this high level, and I don't carry that. Like, I could give a shit if I hop on here and my hair doesn't look right. Like, I could give a shit if I hop on here and a booger is flinging back and forth in my nose. I don't care. Like, I don't have that anxiety level. I used to.
Yeah.
And then I moved 3,000 miles away and I trained myself out of that.
Yeah. I think, excuse me, I think it's very indicative of their generation also. I mean, remember, like, you got to think of like when they were growing up, the moms of the 50s and 60s, I mean, they show it on TV. It's a joke. They're in like a dress with a crinoline and pumps and pearls and a little frilly apron, and they're pulling a roast out of the oven. So it's like, and they're making a drink for their man as soon as he walks in the door, that whole sort of idea of this housewife perfection that was post-war. And if they're not up to those standards, or if somebody, better yet, if somebody else isn't up to those standards, then it's all about, oh, did you see so-and-so? That generation is super gossipy, very judgmental, and very sort of like up in each other's business all the time. And I don't know about you, but me and my friends were just like, oh, fuck that. We don't care.
Exactly. Like, I picture Sherry in that outfit as she's cooking, but I know sure as hell, because I've been to her house a zillion times, that's not how it rolls.
No,
but I think you're right about that too, because what did they have back then? Like, they didn't have connection like we have. Like, we have the ability through social media, through technology, to really connect with others and see it. And yes, we see pictures on social media and everything, but Sherry and I both know who each other is. We both know when we're posting pictures that there's it probably took her an hour to get her kid to sit still to take that picture. You know what I mean? Like, we understand that there's stuff going on. I feel like they just had magazines and television, but nothing interactive to really learn. This isn't real life. These are not real people. This is entertainment.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like we could, like you said, I feel like we could sit here and talk about this for 3 hours. I feel like we probably didn't even dig into your story, nor mine, nor Sherry, quite enough.
Yeah, but I think it's you're absolutely right. But I mean, we could probably each write a book, honestly, about all the bullshit that, growing up and our moms and everything. But I know, I mean, like, a very good friend of mine who you both know, it deals with the same stuff with her mom. I mean, it's not just us. It's a lot of us deal with these mothers who, for whatever reason, in their generation, their emotions, their wants, their needs were suppressed. So they kept everything inside. They kept it all hidden. They kept it all bottled up. And then they take it out on their kids.
Yeah. We're the easiest target. I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
We're
the biggest, failures because we're not doing the XYZ that they were expected to do when they grew up. And it's like you said, it's a completely different generation.
Totally. And we deal with other different things, like maybe the basics we're dealing with, right, are all the same, but we've got so many different scenarios and so many different things coming at us and so many different things on our plate. Like, we can't perform like that.
Parenting is so different now than when they were parents. Like, they didn't have social media to deal with. They didn't have all of the things that we, in addition, have to worry about with our kids.
They didn't have what to expect when you're expecting. They didn't have, even like a mom group. They didn't have a mom's group. They would,
but that's why we do
on the phone and smoke cigarettes and gossip about the PTA meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's funny.
Maybe they just didn't have enough of a support system.
100%. 100% not.
Yeah.
You were saying, Sherry?
I just think that in addition to the moms group and the support, I think that that's why this podcast is really important too, because like you said, not only the three of us, but Random Mom knows somebody. I know other friends of mine that have estranged or strained relationships with their mothers too. I know Katie does also. And so just being able to sit here and chat for an hour and kind of share our stories, now it puts that out there for other people that maybe thought they were alone and thought that this was only a them thing. They can see that they share that with other people. Sometimes just that helps drastically to know you're not alone.
Yeah, I agree.
So true. And I actually put out a post yesterday in MOMnation AZ. I don't know if you guys saw it, but just saying, hey, have you ever experienced strained mother-daughter relationship? This is what we're talking about on the podcast this week. And go look at that post, because there are a ton of comments. Really, truly, we are not alone. And we knew that, I think, before we hopped on, but we're truly not alone. It's not only, adult children like us with their parent or their mom, but it's also now moms like our age that are dealing with it with their daughters too. And so it's kind of this thing that's getting passed down. And, I know we're only 3 ladies, but I feel like this was awesome. And this was a great way, like Sherry said, to share with others so that they don't feel like it's just them, because that anxiety on top of everything else is just debilitating. Like, where do you go from there? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so, I mean, if you're a mom out there, and I mean, especially Mother's Day is coming up in May, and I know, like, every year that's got to be, I mean, some people are super excited for Mother's Day and it's a big deal and everything like that. And God bless the people who have wonderful relationships with their adult mothers or, grandmother, or don't even talk about grandmothers. I had the best grandmothers. But for those of you out there who see everybody celebrating their moms and what a wonderful thing it is and everything like that, and you feel that twinge of like, oh, I don't have that relationship with my mom. There must be something wrong with me. I must have done something wrong, or, this or that. Do not feel alone, And it doesn't mean that you don't love your mom. Absolutely. It doesn't mean that you don't love your mom. And it doesn't mean that your mom doesn't love you.
Right.
It just means that we still have more growing and learning to do.
There's definitely things that need to get out of the way in order for two humans to just come together as themselves, pure, transparent selves. What a beautiful thing that would be, right?
Yeah.
For us all to be able to do that with not just our moms, but maybe there's other people in our lives that we just removing walls. That's like the name of my year. Removing walls. I'm going to show up as me. You're going to be cool with that. You're going to show up as you. I'm going to be cool with that. And we're just going to live our lives harmoniously is what I wish for everybody out there. I know, again, easier said than done.
That needs to be a t-shirt or something.
It does. Wall removal. That's what we are here. We're the wall removal service.
Demolition.
Exactly. Well, Rando Mom, thank you again for being on with us. Would love to continue this conversation at some point, maybe in a future episode. I know there are some things that we just didn't get to because there truly is a lot to unpack here. And all three of us are kind of, I don't want to use the word excited, but passionate about sharing our positions and our pieces of all of this. And it just, time flies. I mean, it's been almost an hour already. So
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And I feel like a bobblehead. I don't know if everybody can see me nodding the whole time you guys were talking, but yeah, it's nice to know that you're not the only one going through these types of things.
Absolutely. Well, my heart goes out to you, Rando Mom. You too, Sherry, the co-founder of MOMnation, and all of you out there in the audience, honestly, because if you follow us, then I'm sure that some of the episodes that we talk about, some of the really hard things, some of the really deep issues are hopefully helping you, or you're experiencing them yourself. And so again, just to not feel alone is really huge. So for all of you out there, if you are interested in being a guest on the show, please follow us at MOMnation USA. That's our handle on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Give us a like, shoot us a message, let us know why you'd like to be on the show. While you're at it right now at your favorite podcast platform, while you're listening to this, please subscribe, download, rate us, so that way we can help get this information out to the masses, out to the mamas that need to hear it. And please, please, please share with your friends. All right, ladies, it's been awesome. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, you guys.